Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström, the author of several sewing books, including Fit for Knits and Master the Cover Stitch Machine, and I also run my own sewing pattern line under the name The Last Stitch.
And my name is Malena Hjerpe, and I work as a freelance pattern maker, and I also create my own PDF patterns under the name Hazelhen Patterns.
And in today's episode, we're going to pick up from a previous episode where we did a Q&A, and we got so many questions that we didn't actually have time for all of them, right, Malena? So now is the chance to finish those. And by the way, we love getting questions, so you can definitely email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, and also you can drop us a comment on our Instagram account or as a comment on our YouTube channel. Both those are at Stitching Tales Pod.
Or just send us a DM. Anyway is a good way.
Yeah, anyway, it's a good way. Snail mail, some message in a bottle, throw it over the Atlantic. We just love to get questions because we love doing these episodes. So we are open for any type of questions, regardless if it's about sewing or maybe running a sewing business, or perhaps you're a little bit curious about what goes behind the scenes and get to know us a little bit better.
Absolutely. Do you want to take the first question?
All right, I will do that. Let me see here. This one is definitely a little bit interesting. It's Katie does sewing, and she says, I have some loose sweater knit. So how do you use that? I am scared if I cut it, it would just fall apart. And yeah, it's a tricky fabric. And just if you're not familiar with, I guess, the difference, we sometimes talk about sweatshirt fabrics, and then we talk about sweater knits. And sweater knit is basically a knitted fabric, and it can be very, very loosely knitted, or it can have patterns. So basically the finished product will look similar to knitted sweater. Right, Malena, is that, I guess that's the correct word of, so you can basically, without knitting, you can buy fabric on a roll that looks like it's knitted.
I mean, it's basically just, I assume now, since we haven't seen this fabric, it's just with a lower gauge, it's a chunkier knitted fabric. It could still be, I mean, single jersey knit as same as a thin t-shirt fabric, but if it's a chunkier yarn that has been knitted, it's more spacious. It looks like a more knitted, regular knitted sweater, so to say. But I mean, it's still a knitted fabric, and it's been knitted like you buy it by the meter. So you need to cut it and sew it. But yeah, it's a little bit trickier to handle compared to a t-shirt fabric.
Yeah, for sure, because there is definitely the one, I guess, common problem is the fact that it might unravel, for instance. I guess that's more common, especially, as you say, it's low gauge. Could you explain that a little bit for us that do not knit? I'm raising my hand.
So on the knitting machine, gauge is the amount of needles per inch. So which means if it's a 3 gauge, there are 3 needles on an inch, and on a really, really fine knit sweater there might be 16 needles, 16 gauge, like 16 needles per inch, which then mean they are a lot more fine and close together, so you get a more tightly knitted fabric compared to really like chunky knit. So that's the difference between gauge. So it's how many needles per inch, and the lower the gauge, like a 3 gauge, then it's like really chunky. If it's like 16 gauge, then it's like really fine knitted sweater, and if you go above 16, then it's like more of a t-shirt fabric, like single jersey. It can't be I mean, it's knitted per meter, so to say. It's not a sweater knitted that is like shaped, knitted, and then linked together as they do on real sweaters. So that's a little bit of knit technology nerding here.
I love that, getting that information. I guess to translate that into hand knitting, so that means, you know, for the lower gauge, that would mean if you knit it with a larger needle, right? If I'm understanding it correctly. And if you use those tiny, tiny needles, that would be similar to the higher gauge.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of opposite, right? Because when you think small, yeah. So, but it's the opposite. But I guess it's just trying to see myself. So basically, and I guess when we are mostly like thinking of sweater knits, those are usually the ones that you would think had been hand knitted with a larger needle. I guess those are the type of fabrics that could prove a bigger challenges when you're sewing, because as you say, Malena, these are not knitted as what they call cut pieces, because you work with that, right? When in the garment industry you can actually like knit a front and a back and a sleeve. So what is that called? So for difference.
I mean, this is not really a correct terminology, I would say, but we call it in the like industry. I mean, you have jersey, which is basically then fabric knitted per meter. You cut, you sew. Usually more finer fabric, like I mean, just regular t-shirt fabric, basically. And then you have knitwear. Garments that are knitted into shapes. You don't cut, like, you know, it's not cutted out fabric. It is actually knitted as it's supposed to be, and then it is linked together, not sewn together. It's linked. So I will try to find pictures of these, because I worked a lot with, I mean, basically my whole career. I worked with both jersey and knitwear, and been to many suppliers that does knitwear, and it's just like completely different. It's a different world. In that sense. Jersey is more similar more similar to woven, like you cut and you sew. But knitwear, like that's a completely different set of machines, the way you're working, and I find it really fascinating. I really love it. So yeah, but here comes then the difficult part, that these kind of fabric are not really suitable to have knitted, like to be knitted per meter and to be cut and sewn, because they unravel, they untangle so easily then. To be honest, I have not sewn that much with like a heavy knitted fabric. Do you have any experience in that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. And I'm definitely going to post some pictures as well on our Instagram account, Stitching Tales Pod. Yeah, so as you say, Malena, the challenge is the unraveling, because you basically, whereas when you cut and sew, right, those edges are finished, just like you would do with when you knitted separate pieces by hand. So that means that if you cut the sleeve opening and the hem, you need to finish it in some way, because it's gonna unravel, unfortunately. So that is the biggest challenge. For instance, if you want to sew a sweater, so first of all, you have to definitely do some type of edge finishing. I highly recommend that you use a serger for this. I mean, that's a good starting point. I mean, you can do it with a sewing machine, but I would not recommend it. I honestly think if you're going to work with these kind of sweater knits, I think you will be very helped by having a serger. So I would definitely overcast the edges using a 3-thread regular overlock stitch before you do anything. I mean, before you start doing. Or if it's not that prone to unraveling, you could of course also first sew the seams together using a sewing machine. But I honestly think that try to serge as much as possible, either doing the edges separately and then sew it together with a sewing machine, or ideally use a serger for the entire process. Because as we mentioned in previous episode, the advantage of using a serger is that you have the differential feed, so you can prevent the fabric from growing when you're stitching by increasing the differential feed, and that's going to be a problem with those loosely knitted sweater knit fabrics. So yeah, definitely I would recommend that you have a serger. And the biggest challenges, of course, is the hem and the neckline, right? We were talking about it, if you're doing a sweater or a cardigan, for instance. My recommendation is to put some type of rib knit to finish it off, to keep it in check. The problem but that's more like a shopping challenge, because, for instance, if you have this beautiful knitted fabric, maybe in a cotton or a wool mix or mohair or something like that, you definitely it's not fun to use like regular cotton ribbing because it will look kind of contrasting. So sometimes it's very nice if you're able to find rib knit wool or some type of mix of fabrics, because then you get a similar type of hand. And I'm going to post on our Instagram account a cardigan that I made when I managed to work with a very loosely knitted sweater, and then I found 100% wool rib knit, and I used that for the placket and the cuffs and the sleeve cuffs. But yeah, it is a challenge. You definitely need to control it, for sure.
You have wider seam allowance maybe also.
Yeah,
usually on jersey you
Mm.
have like 1 centimeter, but that feels very small if you have like this chunky knit. So I would rather have a quite wide seam allowance and cut away the surplus fabric then when you use the overlock.
Yeah, and this is a lot of things tricky. I mean, I'm a big fan of using cutting for marking the notches, but then again, this could also cause issues. So I would either use chalk, and if chalk doesn't stick on the fabric, I would use perhaps some tape or something like that, a pin, or whatever you need to not damage the fabric. And if you have to be really, really careful with all the kind of stuff. So I agree with you. Bigger seam allowance. Do not cut notches, which I normally would recommend. I guess you can also. It depends. You could also, of course, look into lining. That could be a way of controlling it as well. If you maybe add like a backing of some type of soft jersey fabric or something like that. If you were making like a poncho or something like that, maybe you could line it and keep it in check that way. It is tricky. And if the sweater knit is a bit more stable for hemming, I would instead do the method I talk about in our episode we did about hemming knits, where you do the blind hem stitch. Again, you serge the edges, and then you fold it up and use the sewing machine blind hem stitch. Also, another issue is you can't really interface any pieces because it's so see-through. So again, it's going to be. I would say keep it simple. That would be do something like a poncho or a very plain sweater without any details.
A little bit oversized maybe.
Oversized, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, choose the design wisely. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, for sure. And also if you have the time, definitely look into if you can locate some really nice ribbing in a similar type of fiber. I think it's gonna really elevate the garment for sure. And if you're like super great with knitting, you could maybe knit your own ribbing using a matching yarn and then add it. That would not happen to me, but I know a lot of you are skilled in many different crafts, and I'm sure we have a lot of knitters as well, so that could be an option if you're very ambitious.
It's interesting. And if you do this sweater or cardigan or whatever, send us a picture. Sounds really interesting to see the end result here. Yeah,
I love that. And I will say, as I am definitely a fan of doing it myself, because I hate knitting, to be honest. I think it's so dreadfully time consuming, and I get neck problems and everything. So for me, a sweater knit is a way of cheating. So I have tackled this many times. So you're definitely not alone, kid, in this struggle. Some projects have fared better than others. So do not have too high expectations. But if you do get it right, I think you're going to be really, really happy, because it's such a quick way of actually making a sweater that looks like it's knitted.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I saw on Instagram like a person is like, I want to get into knitting, but then again, I can sew a whole sweater in 1 hour. Sticking to the sewing part.
Yeah.
The only time I get really jealous of knitters is when they just pick up their knitting project wherever they are, on the bus, in the train, whatever, and just start to knit. Do you know how much stuff I need to bring if I'm gonna go anywhere with like sewing machine, fabrics? I'm giving the like the evil eye then. I want something like that as well.
Yeah, I love that too. I sometimes do a little bit of embroidery. That's my way of getting that. I truly understand that. I'm the same way. It looks so practical, and you can sit in your cozy lounge chair and watch some television and knit. And I'm like, that's not my reality.
No, I need like 2 big machines to be able to. Yeah, so a little bit different there.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it comes with both pros and cons. But we are very curious to hear more about this. And don't be afraid. I think you don't have to be scared when it comes to sewing. Just jump in. And the worst thing that can happen, it doesn't work out. But it was still a learning lesson. And hopefully you have got at least some ideas on how to use your sweater knits. I'm sure it's really, really pretty.
Yeah, and send us picture if you want to. Yeah. Would love to see it. Okay, maybe next question here. This one I actually got from Penelope_UY. She's actually been a tester of mine, so really happy that she had a question. Where do I find patterns for men? I would like to make more clothes for my husband. Lucky husband, first of all. Do you have any experience in sewing menswear?
Yeah, I do actually, because I used to sew some garments for my ex-husband. Now, that we didn't break up due to my sewing. I should say that wasn't the factor. But yeah, definitely. I've sewn quite a bit. I think I've been married twice. My first ex-husband, he was actually pretty good at the sewing machine, so he did some stuff as well. So yeah, I think I've had a decent amount of experience when it comes to sewing menswear. But yeah, it is a struggle because clearly the market for sewing pattern for men is definitely way more limited compared to what you would find in the female-oriented space. I will not be able to like give you a big list, but I can give you my favorite sewing pattern brand for menswear is Burda Style, hands down. Yes, I know the instructions. Not that great, but you can also buy the pattern envelopes if they are still available. Those are really good instructions. And Burda magazine, at least once or twice every year, they run a pretty nice section of about 4 or 5 menswear styles. I love their sizing. I think it's really good. Especially, I would say, with Burda Style, it's definitely a little bit less ease, I would say. So I wouldn't call it slim fit, but if the man that you're sewing for is a little bit more slim built, I think Burda Style is a good option. I've also sewn menswear using the Big Four. I think they're referred to the American pattern companies. I think McCall, Butterick's, I think, are part of that. Vogue Patterns and maybe
Simplicity.
Simplicity, yeah, right, exactly. I've also sewn a couple of garments from them. And now this was a long time ago, but I will say I did find the ease being much more generous. I think it was Butterick. I tried both Butterick and McCall, I think. And I found the ease being much more generous compared to Burda Style. So for instance, if I made a pyjama pants once from, I think it was McCall, and it was humongous, and the same with the raglan sweater. So that could have changed due to fashion, but that's good to know that different pattern companies, they have different style preferences. And I've sewn, the stuff I've sewn with Burda Style, I think has been really, really nice. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah, I haven't sewn basically. My poor husband has received 1 t-shirt and a pajama bottoms, but those were samples. I was making pattern for another company, and I needed to make a sample just to see like how the fit were. So he got those samples to try and do wearing tests on. But beside that, I have never sewn any menswear, so I have no idea about the pattern selections, what is out there. But my go-to is always the fold line. I mean, if it exists, it's there, I would say. They also have the Big Four pattern lines there as well. So I think that could be a good starting point to start to look.
Yeah, because there are quite a few in the smaller sewing companies that are catering at least a couple of styles, for instance. And I love, because Full also has like great filter function, so you don't have to like shift through all the suggestions. You can just, filter what type of, gender and style and whatever. So that's really, really helpful. Very, very good tip. And I don't know where you're based, Penelope, but also the Finnish pattern magazine Ottobre, they also have menswear a couple of times a year in a pretty good size range as well. If you just very classic basic stuff like a pair of chinos and a sweater or a hoodie, very simple stuff, but yeah, they look good. I haven't sewn one of those, but I think they look pretty nice.
Is Ottobre Finnish?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I think
Cool.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, please correct us if I'm wrong, but I think so.
It just sounds so German to me, but I have no idea either.
No, I'm pretty sure, because the names are very to Swedish Finnish sounding as well. A lot of they call like Tarja or something like that. The pattern names. So I just assume it's Swedish Finnish. Yeah, and I'm sure now that you out there that are listening are definitely perhaps have a better grasp on what type of pattern companies, especially if we would love to also get some indie or smaller sewing pattern names that would get a nice shout out, of course. So definitely drop us a comment over at Stitching Tales Pod or on YouTube channel if you have any suggestions. Spread the word for sure and help Penelope and other that want to sew more for men for sure.
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. Let me see here. Now we had another question. Yeah, we have Stick Freud. I think Stick Freud, I will say. Tell me about sewing with wool. The fabric behaves so differently than the knits I'm used to. Silk would also be interesting. Knitted silk, I mean, not woven. And also, where can I buy rib interlock in these materials without going broke? Love wool so much, but it is expensive. Yeah, we hear you.
I hear you.
We share the same struggle.
Yeah, I mean, wool, I have sewn a little bit with wool, but that has been like a really thin single jersey, so that has been more or less same as just sewing a regular t-shirt. So for me, it was not that big of a difference. It presses beautifully because wool presses really nicely, but it had like really good recovery, that particular fabric, so it wasn't like I didn't have to adjust in that sense. So I would say it depends a little bit on what kind of type of fabric you are using. How to work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to give like a very locally, I think Stick Freud is probably from Sweden or at least in other countries. I'm going to link to that. We have a wonderful company here in Sweden called AH Tyger, and they sell really beautiful single jersey, I think it's single jersey or light interlock wool, and also heavy rib wool in beautiful colors. I've sewn so many garments of that, comes with high recommendation, washes beautifully, will not pill, absolutely amazing. So if you're in Sweden, you're actually in luck, because normally we're not that well served in this small part of the world, but actually those are I would still access those wool. I should perhaps not give that name, and they sell to private persons as well. I'm not sure if they ship to other countries, but that's where I get my dose of wool knits pretty much exclusively. Another tip I would say, if you're looking more globally, is to check fabric shops that specializes in getting like fabric remains, dead stock. What is it called, Malena? The garment industry. Yeah, exactly. When the garment industry, because that's usually you can get small runs of wool knit and of course also silk knit, which is again really, really difficult to find, pretty much impossible here in Sweden, I would say. But yeah, check those companies, and they're quite a few. They do have a decent online presence, and yeah, I'm gonna say, yeah, you will go broke on buying wool and silk, but you will not regret it because you can either buy great wool and you will have garments from years and years and years to come, or you can buy something cheap and it will peel and wash out color and all that stuff. So in the long run, I think you are not going to be broke, you're going to be rich because you will have sewn a wonderful garment that definitely had a sticker shock, but it will last you for so many years. I have garments that I've sewn in wool that are over 10-15 years, and they look still beautiful, and they also keep their shape so much better compared to a lot of other natural fibers.
Yeah, make samples, prototypes first in more like less expensive fabric, so you are 100% sure of how you want the garment to look, to fit, all the details, like you know what you're doing, and then go to the nice fabric. I also have one fabric, a company recommendation, Lyrical Fabrics. We'll link to it in our show notes. I don't know if they always have wool, but they have recently got like a drop of like some really nice sweater knits. So yeah, we'll link to those. It's really really nice.
That's a great
qualities. Tip. I haven't seen them myself, but just by the pictures and the sample they have shown, looks really pretty.
Great tip. And I should also say, it's called Andersson Hjalmarsson if you want to search for it in Swedish. And a silk, I have also some silk jersey in my stash, but I've never been able to find that locally in Sweden, unfortunately. I think also, depending where you live, I do know that sometimes if you're in Norway, they also have like a small industry making like knitted wool underwear and stuff like that. There are a couple of brands that do that, thermal wear, and you can probably locate those and see if they have some dead stock fabric maybe left from samples. I also know that if in the southern hemisphere, I think New Zealand is a huge producer of wool, merino wool and stuff. So they are probably, if you're able to find, I'm sure you can get some shops as well there selling remains and really nice fabrics. I think
silk jersey. I've never actually sewn that, barely even seen. So it's not, I think, that common. But definitely seen garments in like silk blends. So yeah, that might be a trickier to find. But if anyone has any recommendation, I mean, just drop us a comment and we can share those resources.
Yeah,
and nice fabrics is always. And how do you not get broke? Yeah, mindful sewing. Take it slow when you actually are sewing, so the garments will become your most precious possessions.
Yeah, definitely. Prep work is the key here for sure. And I have never regretted paying a lot of money both for my silk and wool. And silk jersey also holds up really well. It holds up well in colors, and it has it's pretty stable. So it has a little bit more stable. It has nice drape, but it's a little bit I should say stiffer perhaps than cotton jersey. And also I should mention, tips, sewing with wool is definitely pre-wash because it's gonna shrink lengthwise. So sometimes I skip pre-washing for a lot of knit fabrics, but I always pre-wash my wool fabric because you don't want that cardigan or whatever, your pants or whatever you're sewing to shrink too much. So yeah, I do recommend that for sure. And you can just hand wash it or use the hand washings. I always use the regular machine hand wash cycle. I mean, it sounds like a oxymoron, but using that program on the machine, I have never had any issues.
No, I mean, as long as those specific machine washes, and there are certain wash. The thing that washes
washing liquid.
Washing liquid. Yeah, there are specifically for wool and silk. So use those as well. I really recommend it. And I have taken some drastic measures in our household. My husband is banned from washing. I mean, he can wash his own clothes. I don't care. Do whatever you want. But my clothes is like that's a no-go. And I say this with experience. I'm still sad about that cardigan from Arket in 100%
No.
wool, boiled wool, the perfect cardigan. I still haven't found a replacement for it, and I'm still a little bit bitter. But yeah, maybe I'll get over it soon. 5 years later, soon, maybe.
Yeah, you know, it's a knife in your heart every time. Yeah, I know exactly, and it's like there's no way to save it. It's like no.
It's completely. It became a kid's cardigan.
Yeah.
And it was quite like a big chunky cardigan, and it was like, it's beyond.
Yeah,
nothing could be done.
Yeah, and basically the thing is here, low heat, and of course no. Tumbling, what is called like the...
No, but that's the thing. I mean, they do take tumbling quite well. It is the low heat, high heat, low heat, back and forth.
That's the
what
thing
that is gonna the wool fiber is gonna like expand and pull back together, and then it's getting like I'm losing all my English words now. That's the thing that is gonna make it like shrink,
like
and
felt,
felt.
Yeah, felt, right.
Yeah, exactly. And also with if you use regular washing liquids or
detergent
whatever,
liquid,
detergent, that is also gonna do the felting. So it's like the low heat, high heat. That's like the biggest contributor that makes it do the felting. So that's why a wool program is like slowly picking up the heat or have like a very low heat.
Gradually building up the heat, yes, okay.
Yeah, exactly,
Interesting.
Yeah, but if you, for example, I've seen people recommend if they, if you have like a stain on the wool, like you can pour basically boiling water on it and then the stain disappear, like it was like a blueberry stain or something. So it's not the heat, it's the back and forth between low heat, high heat. So but I'm not an expert in this, so like don't take my word for anything, but yeah, nobody washes my clothes besides me.
I will say you gave me a better explanation than I've ever heard before, so I'm going to crown you the Stitching Tales expert on wool programs on the machine, because I had no idea about this, that was a factor. I just thought it was the high heat and friction, but yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's very helpful
as well.
Yeah.
The first time I washed when I was in school, a teacher asked us, so like, how do you think the fine program on your washing machine is? And I was like, I can tell because I have been sitting and watching my machine wash my fancy clothes, because I was like terrified that it's gonna be destroyed. So it's like a lot more water. It doesn't like spin the centrifuge like that much. It more lets it soak and then take a turn. So it's
it's more like a cradle than a spin, right?
Exactly.
When
it's like so much more gentle. So I have had traumatic experiences. Let's just put it like that.
To me, it sounds like you're an expert. I mean, I'm blown away by your attention to details here. Who knew? Malena has so many skills. She's also
a washing machines. We are like
yeah. We both have figured out we have some sewing neurosis, but I figure now we also have a washing machine situation here.
Definitely.
Okay, but I love this kind of information. I had no idea. And also, I guess because as we we live in the northern hemisphere, it's cold in the winter. We love our wool. We're crazy for wool, because every sewing machine, every washing machine has both a hand washing program and a wool washing programs. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I'm really curious to know, is that a thing in countries where they have warmer climates, right? Because I know we have listeners from all over the world. Do we even have a wool program? Because who wears wool? I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah, is that just Nordic countries' issues?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a good. So yeah, always pre-wash and use the right program and the right type of. I think it's always liquid. I think those delicate fabrics washing detergents. Yeah, great question, and clearly good luck with that, and hope you manage to find it. Definitely worth the investment. I think I have never regretted any sewing with wool. Plus, it's easy to work with. Actually, it's sometimes easier than lots of other knits, and also pressing, of course, low heat.
Yes, and lots of
low
steam,
heat.
but it presses beautifully since it's a natural fiber, so it presses so nicely.
Yeah, and it holds its shape when you wear it. Great recovery without the need of having lycra. I mean, huge fan.
Definitely.
All right. Let me see here. I think that was kind of all the questions. One was a bit more detailed, but I think we're going to need to look into that a little bit more carefully. I think we need to do but we definitely want more questions from you. And if you found this episode helpful, or made you start to question other things, please drop us a note, as we said, in the comments or in the DMs or email, because I love getting these questions, and it's so interesting because we have to think, as well. We don't always, we get really great challenging questions, so I love doing these Q&A episodes.
Yeah, sometimes a question might actually turn into a whole own episode, like a theme of every episode, so don't be afraid to reach out and send pictures as well, because I mean sometimes it's so difficult to give the right information just based on a question, but if you send pictures as well, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, awesome. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.